We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
And thank you, Marisol. I love that you said surrender, because that's part of what we're going to be talking about today is surrender. So welcome everyone to this last Sunday in January of 2024. You know, time continues to pass, even though it's always now. So this is your opportunity to greet one another on the chat, and so we'll play our opening song. Well, as we begin here, let me share our purpose and one of our 5 core values. We are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self within the appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols. We seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. And I've chosen core value number 1. We trust everyone is led by unique inner guidance. So one experience called awakening, which is realization of one true self. We live this value by supporting one another on different paths of awakening. So let's have our first opening song here. Well, that was interesting. You know what? I copied the wrong link to the song that I wanted, which was The Sounds of Silence. So if you're wondering, so well, what else is going to happen here? So anyway, totally my fault. So
Hey, George, can I interrupt for a second?
yes.
Not knowing that it was an accident, here's what I thought. Here's the interpretation I heard. I thought that was an invitation. That was the ego inviting us to come out of inner silence and be engaged in the world. And you were going to make some kind of a play on that. So I think it was perfect.
Thanks, Regina. Yeah, that's well, hopefully my internet stays connected here. So it's time for an invocation. And so God help us as we go through this this time together, this message that you are going to give us. And thank you so much. Thank you for life. Thank you for being. And thank you for this experience that we're having in the illusion of the world. So I'm so happy to be here and allow you to flow as you will. Amen. Now then, Melissa is going to do our reading. And the reading is from Joan Tollifson. Joan we did a set song with her in 2018 on April the 15th, as a matter of fact. And Melissa, if you will start at direct experiencing, written the day after the retreat. So it's kind of a long reading, so we had an introduction, but let's start there. So go right ahead.
Good morning. Direct experiencing, by the way, I just have to insert this. That song goes right along with this reading too, George. So, hey, there's that. Direct experiencing. The spiritual life is primarily about direct experiencing. It's not primarily about philosophies, ideas, or thinking, and it's definitely not about beliefs. But we're deeply habituated as humans to focus on the realm of abstract, conceptual thought. And of course, that realm has its place. We can't function without it. But some spirituality of the kind that interests me invites a different possibility. It's an approach that finds liberation not in perfecting the little me, but rather in discovering that we are actually much more and much less than this phantom, and that what we are seeking is right here. It's about open listening, spaciousness, groundlessness, cluelessness, wonder, curiosity, and devotion to the actuality of here now, just as it is. This isn't about escaping our humanity or always being in a state of bliss. We cannot avoid pain and painful circumstances or the vulnerabilities of these fragile human body minds. And no matter how much humans may evolve as a species to greater degrees of sensitivity, the world will never be a flawless utopia with vegetarian tigers and only nice people behaving exactly as we think they should. But in this moment now, the one and only moment, there is the possibility of waking up to a wholeness in which nothing needs to be different from how it is. There is the possibility of discovering that we are not bound or lacking in the ways we imagine. We discover this by giving open attention to our actual direct experiencing and to the felt sense of presence or simple being. We can discover experientially that nothing stays the same for even an instant, that everything is dissolving in the very instant it appears, that nothing solid, substantial, or persisting actually exists in the way we think it does, that we are at once no thing and everything. We discover that thought always gives us a partial, oversimplified, incomplete, frozen abstraction of what is actually alive, unresolvable, ungraspable, unpindownable. We can discover that the nature of this wholeness, the undivided presence, is unconditional love that is always allowing everything to be just as it is. Always allowing everything to dissolve and disappear, never clinging to anything and never seeing anything other than itself. What we're seeking is always right here, but paradoxically, there does seem to be a process of discovery and realization. And as many great teachers have pointed out, much of the transformative process of seeing through the false and relaxing into the real happens outside of our conscious awareness. In other words, we don't always know it's happening. Thought is not directing it, and thought is not capable of accurately assessing how it's going. Transformation is non-conceptual and inconceivable. It's not linear, and it's not personal. It's a happening of the whole universe. Reading, thinking, listening to talks, all of that has its place. But the most important work happens in silence, in being, in experiencing, feeling, sensing, awareing, knowing, knowingly being this presence that we are and that everything is, and also discovering that we can actually never not be this. This includes absolutely everything. We tend to be uncomfortable with absorption in the nonverbal, experiential dimension, because it feels unpredictable and out of control. Language, thinking, and conceptualizing give us a sense of control, a sense that we know what this is, where we are, and what's happening. But the truth is, we don't. Thought, posing as me, the illusory, separate, encapsulated, autonomous self, is never in control. It is a powerless mirage. The only real power is elsewhere, i.e., right here. It is the power of life itself. Of course, life includes thinking. It includes everything. But thinking can never capture or control it. We, as this boundless and impersonal aware presence, this seamless and centerless present experiencing, are not other than this power. But it is not a power that thought controls. We, as apparent individuals, are not doing it. It is doing us, and we are it. There is nothing else here. Language just can't ever quite say it. But we know we can know it. In fact, we are always knowing and being it. It just can't ever be put into words or ideas, not really. So when we try to get it mentally, it never quite lines up, and we end up confused and stuck in apparent paradoxes, trying to reconcile what thought has seemingly divided up and set in opposition. But when we turn to presence and direct experiencing, all the problems, confusions, and apparent conundrums evaporate. Nothing is actually in opposition to anything else. No thing ever actually forms in any separate, persisting, or independent way. Presence is most intimate, closer than close, all-inclusive, limitless, unbound. It is the no-thingness, the aliveness, the non-substantiality, the radiance of everything. We discover this by simply giving open attention to whatever is showing up. Present experiencing, the sensory, energetic immediacy of this very moment. Hearing sounds, seeing colors and shapes, feeling sensations in the body. Thought, identified as me, may try to do this in a very heavy-handed, result-oriented way, which is how we often habitually go about things, employing effort and willpower, and then judging how well or how poorly we are doing, while striving for some imagined future perfection. But that approach tends to reinforce the very delusion it is attempting to wake up from. The thought sense of encapsulation and separation, the belief that we are fundamentally deficient and in need of something different and better to happen so we can finally be okay. But the little me is never okay, or not for long. The only actual okayness is in the wholeness, the unconditional love, the total acceptance of what is, and the recognition that everything is included, that everything is this. So instead of trying really hard to shift the focus of attention and then keep it shifted, all of which is a losing battle, I recommend a more relaxed and playful approach, exploration rather than practice, with no goal in mind. And if a goal should appear in the mind, simply seeing that for what it is, a habitual conditioned thought pattern. And it might be discovered that even this thought pattern is nothing other than this presence, this no-thingness, this aliveness appearing momentarily as that thought pattern. Nothing needs to be different from exactly how it is, and nothing will ever stay the same. Sometimes the weather is clear and sunny, sometimes it's cloudy or stormy. It all belongs. Everything is included, Nothing is personal. So relax and enjoy the show. And if you can't relax, be tense. That too is simply another momentary impersonal shape this presence is taken. And whenever it invites you, explore the possibility of giving open, relaxed attention with curiosity and wonder to whatever is showing up. The colors, shapes, sounds, textures, tastes, and smells, somatic and kinesthetic sensations, movements of light and shadow. This whole happening in all of its infinitely varied detail, as well as the felt sense of presence itself. And when thoughts arise, as they almost certainly will, maybe they can be explored without logging into the content as simply ungraspable energetic pulsations, gone before they arrive, knowing that all of this, thoughts included, is what is an indivisible whole in which nothing exists independently of everything else. It can't be pulled apart. It can't be other than it is. And how it is can never be captured by thought. The words can only point to what is wordless and utterly free. The infinite here and now, utterly immediate and ever present, but utterly unresolvable and never the same way twice. In truth, we are not separate from each other or from the world, from the whole earth, the sun or the moon or billions of stars, not separate from the entire universe. Listening silently in quiet wonderment without knowing anything, there is just one mysteriously palpitating aliveness. Tony Packer. I wish you all a truly wonderful 2024. It promises to be quite a wild year in so many ways. But remember, nothing is ever what it seems to be or what we think it is. And we can't have the light without the dark, nor can they ever be pulled apart. We contain it all. Awareness resists nothing and allows it all to appear and disappear, as everything instantly and endlessly always does, vastly beyond our attempts to capture or control it. And no two people will see any of it exactly the same way. So, how solid is it? Love to all.
Thanks, Melissa. Beautiful, beautiful reading there. And you did perfectly. By the way, it was a little difficult for me to find material on silence. I know there's probably a lot of it out there, but I reached out. I reached out to Regina, and I reached out and actually Susan Bacon came up with this Joan Tollifson material, and she also came up with some Gina Lake material, which is talking about the importance of practicing silence. So this is one of the things that's been on my mind for quite some time. Just in the back of my mind there. I think for those of you who know me, being in silence is not my natural state. If I'm around somebody, I'm either talking or listening. So this is something that I don't have a lot of direct experience with. And I think it's probably the same for most of you. The last couple of homilies I did one on meditation and I did one on contemplations. Well, this is the third key, silence. Joan, after this retreat, and as a matter of fact, this was a retreat that happened this month. But she also shares
I think George's screen might have frozen. Oh,
I think I faded. Hopefully I'm back. So I had never not spoken intentionally a single day of my life. And I wasn't sure how this silent retreat would go. Uh, experience is everything. And having no experience, I didn't know what to expect. And yet, after spending a week not speaking, and we were in a beautiful wooded area with a lake, and it was a retreat center. And it was a wonderful experience. And I really, at the end of the week, I felt really kind of a euphoria, just enjoying nature. Okay, New Hampshire. All right, I knew it was up there somewhere. So that was my experience of silence. So I don't have a lot of experience with it, and yet I'm being drawn to it. And of course, tomorrow never comes. You know, if I'm going to do it tomorrow, it's never going to get here. So at some point, I have to make the decision to really delve into this. And let's see. You know, I'm going to share a little bit of a poem that Abigail Edwards wrote in 2022. We had a retreat here. I'm not going to read the whole poem because it's quite lengthy, but the richest images of your mind pale in contrast to that, awaiting, digging within. Fields of golden wonder await your vision, turned inward. Pure harmony, peace, and bliss grow forth with perennial beauty. You know, we live in a world of thought and perceptions and projecting outward. And yet, everything we experience in this illusion pales in contrast to going within, to turning the focus within. And so how do we do that? We do that by making silence important. So look over here before I go on to. Okay, Joan shares with us reading, thinking, listening to talks. It all has its place. And everyone in this room are dedicated to that. But the most important work happens in silence, in being, in experiencing, feeling, sensing, awareing, knowing that being this presence that we are and everything that is, and also discovering that we can actually not be this. And this includes absolutely everything. So presence is the most intimate. closer than close, all inclusive, limitless, unbound. It is the no thingness, the aliveness, the non substantiality, the radiance of everything. So, words can only point to this. I'm going to step over to some Gina Lake. Gina Lake channels Jesus. And she gave a talk, which I have a copy of here, The Importance of Practicing Silence. A very valuable spiritual practice is keeping silent. Being silent for seconds, minutes, hours, days, or weeks is a time-honored practice for breaking identification with one's thoughts. This is because one of the biggest reinforcers of the thought stream is speech. Giving voice to thoughts fortifies them like nothing else. Whenever you stop yourself from saying something that you would ordinarily say, you're making a conscious choice to extinguish that thought. Over time, making that choice will weaken the potency of the entire thought stream. So, according to Gina Lake, just practicing, even for a few seconds, with conscious deliberation for a few minutes, or a few hours, or a few days, makes all the difference. Michael Langford, suggested that everybody meditate 12 hours a day, if possible. Well, most of us are not even willing to contemplate that and to do that. Regina dedicated a year of silence, partial silence, because, we have stuff to do. We have jobs. We have people to interact with. Regina had Jasmine, so Jasmine went to school. She could focus on contemplation and silence, and she spent that year focusing on the 7 steps of awareness. And then, she interacted with Jasmine and whoever else she needed to interact with. But she also shared, let's see, I got stuff all over here. See if I can find Regina's email. After got her name on it, Regina. So around that time, 2023 turned into 2024, I received new general guidance to live by. My old guidance, which I followed for the last 3 or 4 years, was surrender to family. The new guidance that came is submit to silence. That means to submit to silence. Means that I am to allow myself to be continuously led by silence without questioning its authority. I am to let silence direct my thoughts, opinions, and behaviors for the purpose of being directed undeviatingly. I thought you didn't use big words, Regina. I'm not even going to say it again. On a straight course, which we know is towards enlightenment. And a couple of weeks ago, I received the guidance to feel all moments, or the yes or no that comes. So this week I sat down to journal, and this guidance came from inner wisdom. Surrender is the best position to take now. All other positions are surrendered. Look deeply and notice all positions that you hold, and then surrender them for silence. Silence is the next goal. Keeping your eyes on that target, or keep your eyes on that target, and notice everything that interferes with silence and surrender it. All positions interfere with silence. There are opinions and therefore chatter related to each position held to it. In fact, you can recognize the position by the chatter that surrounds it. Silence is the path of disappearance. Chatter maintains ego, and you must recall how much you want enlightenment now, which is true vision. Only through full commitment to this final desire can you transcend all other positions, all other footholds for the me. So, what I'm reading is promises. Spirit, first of all, we need to follow our own guidance. And if that's not your guidance, then wait until you have that guidance. So, I'm feeling that guidance to step into this. And yet, I'm a master procrastinator. Absolutely a master procrastinator. And I've been considering this for several months, and it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see. Give me just a second. My neighbor wanted to tell me I left my truck running, which I did. My truck has a satellite signal in case the internet went out here. I was going to have to jump over to it. So unfortunately, it has to be running. It's sitting outside there running. So at any rate, I'm feeling this pull. I know Michael Langford had a group that quite a few years ago actually presented in the sanctuary. And for a short period of time, I don't remember that they presented for very long, but their goal was to meditate 3 hours a day. And so, of course, in meditation, you're doing this in silence, 3 hours a day. So think about your life. You know, as I look at, I'm retired, so I've got no excuse. Absolutely none. And yet I look at my life and I fill it up. I can sit at this computer all day long. I'm sort of an information junkie, and it doesn't really matter what kind of information. I love learning. And I can sit there and listen to one knowledgeable person after another, after another. Busyness is one of the ego's primary weapons against losing us to awakening. Busyness. And I have no problem being busy. Yes, busyness is a defense against God, as Regina shared. And I recognize that. Busyness. So, you know, I look at it when I wake up in the morning, I check the weather, I check the news feeds, I check email, I check YouTube. There's people that do little short presentations every day, and I usually follow a few people, and then it goes on, and I can sit there and get totally absorbed, and then the day's gone. Or I've got a list of to-do things. So, yes. So you can sit. Yep, I can sit. I can sit in this chair hours at a time. So, I just, I have this sense that practicing silence is extremely important. So, keeping silence, I'll read Gina's material again. Keeping silent for just a few seconds before speaking will make your interactions with others deeper and more meaningful, as the thought stream is less likely to be mindlessly indulged in. Not filling the space with idle chatter leaves space for presence to enter and either speak through you, through the other person, or just be there. When we're listening to somebody, are we really listening to them? Most of us are really thinking about, well, this is how I'm going to respond to what they're saying. We're not really totally focused on everything that they're sharing with us, because our mind is already busy churning out some kind of response. So if we just take, first of all, when we're listening to someone, look at these thoughts that are coming and just let them pass. Keep focusing on what's being said. And then when a break comes and it's time to respond or not, then you allow inner guidance to share. Not your mind, inner guidance. Keeping silent for longer periods, for days or weeks, is an even more powerful practice. That's when you can really begin to conquer the habit of speaking whatever is on your mind. After keeping silent for a week or more, often in spiritual retreats, many have had their first experience of presence and a quiet mind. So, we do have retreats that focus on silence, and yet we can practice silence wherever and whenever we are for free. We don't have to travel anywhere. We don't have to spend any money. We just sit there and allow silence to guide us. At a certain point, presence overwhelms the power of the thought stream. And you realize that in truth, you are presence. We think we're a person, an individual. We've got a history. We have memories. As we get older, those memories fade. But we have memories of what we think happened in the past. And we fully identify with ourselves as a person. And we know at some point the story of this person is going to be over. But the reality is Eternity is always right now. It's always now. And the only way to really, truly understand what's going on is to focus on silence and allow guidance to flow within us. And I'm not going to say that I haven't done any of that. I certainly do. I've really stepped up my meditation and contemplation, although, in my judgment, which is George's thought and mind, it's never enough. So, but forget that thought. And I heard a sales instructor one time talk about how to get started. He said, well, you take a rock and you throw it up in the air, and wherever you land, you start right there. So, you take that rock of beingness and we throw it up in the air, and then we just start right there. So, an important aspect of the practice of silence is taking a break from conversations. TV, the news, movies, the internet, and other forms of mental entertainment and stimulation. Listening to other people's egoic minds in the media or elsewhere can draw you into the ego's world and reinforce the false self as much as listening to your own mind can. And so, I'm guilty of that. I used to spend actually almost 4 hours a day absorbing news media. It's been a long time ago. I finally got over that habit, but I still look at the bullet points of what's going on, or at least not necessarily what's going on in the world, but someone's opinion of what's important in the world. And as I look at these bullet points, it's like 99% of it is just garbage. Just garbage. And there's no truth to it. It's just an opinion. So, as we take a break from that, it changes. It changes how we understand truth. Today's generation we have tremendous advantages today. I mean, this is probably the best time in the world to be alive. 100 years ago, 95% of the entire world lived in abject poverty. Just a little over 100 years ago, abject poverty. The whole world lived in third world circumstances. When I was a child, we had no TV. We had a radio, no TV, and no telephone. Internet was just a distant thought in some engineer's mind. So it was pretty easy. And we didn't interact with a lot of people, compared to today. We didn't interact with a lot of people because you didn't, to make a phone call outside of your local area was long distance. It cost a lot of money. I remember even in my 20s, I might spend 2 or 3 months before I'd call my parents and say, hey, how you doing? Now then, that would be unheard of. I mean, unless you don't like your parents and don't want to interact with them. But now it's just commonplace. You can talk to anybody in the world at any time. I was in another organization and we had people all over the world, but I called some guy in Australia and I messed up the time zone. I called him at 3 o'clock in the morning, his time. It's like, oops. But, that makes it a lot more difficult because there's always something to do now. The idea of sitting on the porch and just relaxing and drinking sweet tea in the rocking chair is not an experience that most people even have a desire for. So, to flourish, one's spiritual life requires alone time, space, and quiet, including a break from stimulating the mind. To touch into and cultivate the silence within, silence is necessary. What you do in the silence is simply notice whatever is showing up in the silence, and you make space. And then you see what arises in that space, which is the space from which all life springs. Making room for silence might mean setting and simply noticing your thoughts without engaging them, which is a type of meditation. Or you might sit outside and gaze at the trees or the sky. You might take a walk in nature, listen to music, or simply lie on the sofa or in bed. And the important thing is that these activities take you into presence. I get to spend the summers in Colorado, in La Vida. And I love that. I love that. First of all, it is beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. And there's so much to do outdoors. It's easy to be outdoors in Colorado. I think you could live your whole life there and never even see the whole state. I think I've been going out there about 5 years and I've just scratched the surface. So being out there on the trails, just enjoying the trees, the mountains. I know it's not possible for everyone to come out, but if you can, you should do it at least once. So make a conscious choice to make room for silence. Stop speaking, even briefly. And this sends a message to your unconscious that you're in charge, not it. Well, Spirit doesn't want silence to happen here. So in all kinds of distractions here. Boy, as usual, I'm running out of time. So let's talk about overcoming roadblocks, the silence. When you begin to practice a practice of silence, whether it's being more silent in your everyday life or taking a day or more to be silent, the mind will try to undermine your efforts with certain thoughts. It's too hard. It isn't necessary. It won't matter. This is silly. You're being impolite. You're being unsociable. People won't like you. People will think you're strange. You know what? I think people think that a lot of us are strange anyway. So what does it matter what other people think? Just notice such thoughts and remind yourself that every effort to be silent or to speak only when necessary does matter and benefits everyone. Whatever is good for your spiritual well-being must also be good for everyone else in the whole. So I'm going to share to close here out of Abigail's poem again. Love has value. Awareness has value. Consciousness has value. Willingness opens the door. Love adds the wings. Courageous heart opens to accept the beautiful gifts offered. Casting believing attention is rich fertilizer for the contents of the mind to blossom. So let's let the contents of our mind blossom by turning inward, focusing inward, and allowing Spirit to be our guide. Thank you. And I'll turn it over. Well, actually, I guess this is the time that anyone else can share anything that they'd like to say about the homily,
We can share the second song if you'd like, George.
or we can share the second song. So I believe, Jacqueline, I see your hand.
There, I was trying to unmute. Hey, George, thank you so much for your message this morning. It was quite profound. I too have been called to increase silence. And yeah, just what you had to say is just such a guiding light. And I am so grateful. I loved what you wrote with inner wisdom. Every point that you made this morning was helpful to me on the journey I'm embarking on. Truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And I suspect that many of us have that in the back of our mind, being called to silence. So, you know, what time is it? Okay, we got like 3 minutes. Anybody else want to share? If not, we can play the last song, or one of the last songs.
There were some things, George, whoops, she's playing the song. Never mind. Oh, she stopped. Okay. There were some things she said, George. Some of it you were reading from Gina Lake, some of it you were sharing on your own, but there were some things you said that I think are worth repeating. So I just want to share some of what you said. One was, whatever is good for your spiritual being must also be good for everyone in the whole. I love when you said, I don't remember who you said this, but where, if you're feeling called to silence, where are you going to start this? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I love that you said, take a rock, throw it up in the air, and wherever it lands, start there. I thought that was a brilliant, brilliant rule. Of course, you said we can focus on silence wherever we are. And then you said, for free, like it costs no money. You mentioned, of course, this is important for all of us, that busyness is a defense against God. And another thing that you said was silence is the radiance of everything. You also said, one of the first things you said was, how are we going to increase our silence in our life? We do that by making silence important. So thank you, George.
Thanks, Regina. Joanne? Or Joan?
Joanne?
Oh, Joan. Joanne. I didn't recognize you with your hat on.
I know. I'm not presentable otherwise. Okay, so I too really liked something you said. Well, first of all, this whole thing still reflected your journey, which I really appreciated. And not, I wouldn't say struggle, but the decision that you're faced with, coming up about how you're going to do silence. And the whole idea that you're master of procrastination, which to me is resistance, which really it describes many of us, or me, and then you also said that Michael Langford encouraged 3 hours a day. Well, then what came to me was, Awakening Together offers gentle healing. Perhaps silence can be like a gentle silencing where you only do 3 hours a day, 3 days a week or something, to start where that rock dropped, if that makes sense. But just to wrap that thought up and just to drive it home, you said everything pales to turning within. Awesome. Thank you.
All righty. It looks like, and by the way, Awakening Together, Marisol posted a donation link if you feel so guided. We survive in part on your support. So your generous support keeps the lights on and the Zoom room running. So, all right, Marisol, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.